Getting the Most Out of Life by Ernest Holmes. Jesus told us that we should not judge according to appearances, because he said there is a perfection at the center of our being. This is what he meant when he said, "Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect." This he proclaimed when he said, "It is neither lo here nor lo there, for behold, the kingdom of God is within you." Jesus was speaking to the outward man when he said, "Be ye perfect." He was really telling human beings that they ought to be perfect because the Father within them already is perfect. It is this inner center of our being that is meant by Christ, or the anointed, or the illumined. This is why one of the followers of Jesus said that we should put off the old man, which of course means our fears and follies, and put on the new man, which is Christ, or as the Bible says, Christ in you, the hope of glory. Christ really means God in us. It means the divine Son at the center of our lives. And this is indeed the healing Christ. And if Jesus was right, we are both safe and sane when we believe there is a perfection forever established, a kingdom of God forever at hand, and the possibility of a good which is available right now. But Jesus was more than a great spiritual thinker. He was a very practical person. He was confronted by people then, just as he would be now, who were sick. They were impoverished and unhappy, and by those who had lost hope and the enthusiasm and joy for living. It was to these people that he spoke. It was to them that he ministered. It was to them that he taught. Jesus taught in the fields and out in the desert, and as he walked by the wayside. He taught in the crowded street corner and by the shores of the lake. He said if we would let go of fear and doubt and gain faith, then we would discover something that we had never even dreamed of. We would discover that there is a perfection, a completeness, a wholeness at the very innermost center of our own being. And since the teaching of Jesus contains the key to right living, it is well to consider its meaning. And in doing this, we should forget all our long arguments and controversies because they are of no importance whatsoever. We should read the words of Jesus as though he meant what he said and start all over again with a completely new and fresh outlook. And I am certain if we do this, we will find that the teaching of Jesus was the very essence of simplicity. Jesus said, God has made you. The divine Spirit is already in you. This is your Father in your heaven. And God desires only your good. The Spirit already has provided a law of good and given you the use of a power greater than you are. And if you would only learn to live in recognition of this and in harmony with this law, then the miracle of life and love will take place, and you will find that you are free right now. This is what Jesus meant when he said, "And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." So you see, Jesus coupled our knowledge of spiritual truth with the thought that there is a law of good that acts on our belief and brings into our experience those things that we believe in and accept. It might be a little strange to say that Jesus was the greatest psychologist who ever lived, but he was. It might seem more strange to say that Jesus told us all about psychosomatic medicine, but he did. And it might seem even more difficult to believe that Jesus actually told us that there is a key to successful living because there is a law of good which we can use. This is what is meant by the healing Christ. And another thing, we should realize that Jesus was not talking about any particular age. He was not talking about just himself. For over and over again, he said that what he did we could do also, that what he was we may become. It is exactly as though he would have come among us today and say, "You are poor and sick and weak and unhappy, and you don't know how to get along with people. Problems of human existence are so great that you sit down in the midst of your trouble in despair." But it is also as though he were proclaiming, "This is all unnecessary. There is a presence within you which already is perfect. You need not worry over your previous mistakes, nor live in anticipation of tomorrow as being unpleasant or unhappy. All you have to do is to learn to live here, today. And when you do this, previous mistakes will be blotted out and your future will be taken care of." But he said, before this can happen, you must learn to live rightly. It is in this moment of time that we are to make the great decision. It is in this day in which we are now living that we must choose what path to follow. Shall we live in fear or in faith? Shall we live in confusion or in the peace which comes from a deep and an abiding conviction that there is a power greater than we are, ready, willing, and able to work for us? And I think the outstanding thing in the new spiritual outlook of today is that we are called on to experiment with this power, to invite this presence, and actually to live as though God were here, now. But we should not expect to change our whole mode of thinking in just a moment. Even Jesus grew in grace, and frequently he told his followers that it might take time and effort to bring about the great good that they desired. He said this kind comes out but by fasting and prayer. And what he meant was that sometimes when we are confronted with great difficulties and seem to be surrounded by confusion, don't even feel well physically, when we are discouraged and distraught, this kind comes out but by fasting and prayer. After carefully going over all these teachings of Jesus and listening to his wisdom again, we cannot help but realize that he is really telling us how to change our mode of thinking, how to set up a new polarity in the mind, which will attract the good we desire rather than repel it. Jesus seemed to have laid no restriction on the willingness of this power to operate for us, other than that everything we do and say and think should be based in a consciousness of love, in a realization that we must be one with others, even as we are one with God. And this is why he prayed that they might be one, even as we are one. The training of the mind to think differently and to think affirmatively is simple enough, but I wouldn't say that it is very easy, for a thing can be simple without being easy. And again, this is where faith must be used. Faith in a power greater than we are, based on the firm conviction that we live in a divine presence which wishes us only good, and that God has intended that every man should be well and happy and successful. Common sense should teach us that we did not create the universe, nor need we be responsible for the laws of good or nature or God. All that we can do is to use them. But perhaps we have been using them wrongly in our ignorance. Now we are called on to re-educate our minds, to reform our thinking, to make a complete and final surrender of all our littleness and fears and our doubts and our uncertainties to that great big something within us that is always calm and certain and sure. That something, perhaps, that has never really left its divine kingdom, even though our minds have become so confused, so unhappy, and so full of fear. And this is the great challenge. It is also the great adventure, the adventure of faith in a power greater than we are, the challenge of a love that abides forever. Let us say then, in the quiet of my mind, I realize that I am one with the eternal newness of life. All that Spirit is creates in and through me now, and my body is alive with the life of God. My body is filled with the light of God. There is no darkness or discouragement, no despair or defeat. My mind is refreshed in that one mind that eternally gives of itself to its creation. All that the Father hath is mine. I open my heart to accept the good gifts of life, the gifts of joy and happiness, of enthusiasm, right here and now. And I open my heart to know that that which is forever ageless is the source of my being. I decree that my body and my experience shall reflect the image of life in all of its newness, and I shall sing and dance through the days of my years with gladness in my heart. I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever, knowing that my cup is full to overflowing with the only life there is, the life and the love and the eternal youth of God.
There you have it, the recording of Getting the Most Out of Life, the 45 RPM record. And what we're going to do now is Martha's going to put us in some small groups. And Martha, I would say, probably 3 to 5 people, whatever you work it out is perfect. In your small groups, what I'd like, again, the dialogue on is what'd you get out of it? What were some of the key points that you thought that Holmes was making in this message? That's number one. Second thing is, if there's anything that wasn't clear, just what was that? Was there something that you had a question about? And third, how can you apply his concepts in your life? And if there's anything else you want to share, obviously do that and introduce yourselves as you get into the groups and you don't know each other. So any questions before we go into the small groups? Okay, well, enjoy that. And we'll come back afterwards and do some larger group sharing. And maybe if there's some unanswered questions, we can have a dialogue around those.
I think Van Cleve wanted to make a contribution.
Oh, hey, Jim, jump in.
I look at it really simply. God is bigger than the universe. God is bigger than God's creation. He's much more.
Or she.
It. He or she or it.
The thing itself.
Thank you for the she part.
Yeah, simpler way of saying it. Thanks, Jim. Sometimes I get into mental maps where I think about our teaching symbol, or I think about the tree of life in the Kabbalah. God is not outside the tree of life, but created the tree of life and allows itself to flow through it. God's created this, everything that we throw up as a map is just our human representation of trying to make sense of something that transcends us. And so it's a way of us trying to make some sense out of it. So I'll say, Alicia and I, when we were talking, one of the things that came up and where we sort of went with this is the fact that when Jesus talks about us being perfect, we can look out at the world of form and it doesn't look perfect to us because we have in the mental realm, we judge the world of form and stuff sometimes as being less than perfect. But within the divine, within God, which is within us, if we can turn our eyes upward into spirit, then we can see and sense the good, as Emma Curtis Hopkins referred to it, or the divine perfection, that it's available to us. If we can bring ourselves into alignment with the good or the divine or the perfect, then we can manifest that stuff into our lives. But a lot of times, what do we focus on? We focus on the world of form and stuff and see the gaps between what we want and what we're experiencing. And when we focus on those gaps, we get more of the gaps. So the idea is, how can we turn inward and turn upward to sense the perfection that is within us, know that perfection, and stay anchored in it so that we can manifest that in our lives through our thoughts. Any reactions to that?
Has anybody on this call mastered what Mark just shared?
Who's talking?
I'm Rebecca. This is Rebecca.
Hi, Rebecca.
In
Was
moments,
that Kathy that asked that?
That's a good question. It comes up in my classes a lot, Rebecca. And to me, it is an ever upward aspiration towards. It is moments when you recognize it and know it and manifest your life. There's moments when I can experience little miracles and the divine flow of perfection when you're in harmony. Harmony is a concept that Holmes talks about, that when we're when we are turning into the perfection that is within us, that is within the divine, and allow it to flow through us, we're in harmony. When are you out of harmony? In a musical, it's when two chords don't go together, you're discordant. In many of our lives, we're in discordant because what we know the perfection, and then we have our experiences that are less than perfection, and it plays like two chords that don't go together, and we're not in harmony. So when we want to get our lives into harmony, we'll know it and we feel it. That's when we feel like we're in the flow, things are working out, miracles are occurring in our life. And do we have those moments? The question for me would be, do you ever have that moment? If you have, what were you doing and how can you manifest that more? Does anybody do it 24/7? Maybe Jesus, but even him, I doubt. He probably came closer. Harry, jump in.
Yeah, I don't know quite how to do this, but I got in a discussion last Saturday, impromptu, with a woman who said, "What church do you go to?" And she seemed much relieved to find out that it was religious science and not that one that the movie Scientology. She seemed much relieved by that. But when she found out kind of that it was a New Thought church, she said, so you think you're God then? I said, I would not go with that language. What I use as my preferred way of thinking when I look at you or anybody else is, a manifestation of divinity, just as I and everybody are all manifestations of that one divinity. And she seemed to find that was very palatable to her very Christian belief system, but it's the one I use that I refer to very often to come back into alignment when I'm out.
Beautiful way of putting it, Harry. Thanks for sharing that. Any other thoughts coming up for anyone right now? We got just a couple of more minutes left. Anyone? Tracy Brown, you've been on here and I haven't heard your voice all day. Put you on the spot.
Oops. There's a reason for that, Mark Gilbert.
You could pay me back later.
But our group did have a great conversation, so I didn't really have anything like to add from that, but from what you just said and what the comment that Rebecca added as well, or the question that Rebecca added, I think the thing that came up over and over again is, yeah, it's simple, but it's not easy. Right. And that's why we're not in that state or in that alignment 100% of our waking time, because we're not consciously there, but we can always consciously choose to move back My favorite line I shared with the group in the recording is, you know, how about if we read Jesus as if he meant what he said? Like, oh, and how about if we lived our lives doing what we teach?
Right, right. Yeah, I love that, and the fact that he said that we're already perfect, but we have to live rightly. I love that phrase, live rightly. And there's another part to it. We don't have to know it. We got to turn around and apply it. Yeah.
Can I mute my audio and video now?
Bye, Tracy. Love you too. Anyone else before we conclude today?
Well, I am grateful as we were looking at moving the Science Mind Archives to Unity Village. You know, I was able to see this office that I would be in as executive director at Charles R. Fillmore's office. And if you look outside, you have these fountains and the tower. And I just kept visualizing and feeling into like being in this office, in this desk, right where I am right now. And I look outside to see fountains and the tower. And it really is kind of humbling, you know, when you get to that place of manifestation and when it does all come together, you're just like in awe. And so I've just been in awe of being here and grateful.
Yeah. Yeah, and the key again is to focus on those and see them, and then okay, what was I doing, and how can I create that more, and not dwell on the negativity, the divisiveness, the things that in the world of form that are less than what we want, but see the miracles that are occurring all the time. Jim, I saw your hand.
It was just a quick question about the date of this recording. Did you mention that, or because I missed it if you did?
You know, in 1957 is when he issued the 13 records. So this came out in 1937, and I think most of the audios that he recorded were in 1957, 57, were when they were recorded. He then did a later set of records that the ones that we recently put up on the website that are longer, those came out in 59 and were recorded a little bit later. And I don't know the history of why they never finished the series, why they didn't do the full 52. That's a curiosity to me as well. And nothing in the archives that we found has really said why the decision was. I assume it was because they didn't sell well, but that's just an assumption on my part. Well, I want to thank everybody for being with us here today. Kathy, I'm going to turn it over to you for our final words and maybe close us out with a prayer, and encourage everyone to be here next month for another recording of Ernest Holmes and another lively discussion. Also to continue supporting the archives through your time, talent, and treasures. I encourage you to donate to the archives through our website and ensure our ongoing longevity, as well as assist us with our moving cost. So, Kathy.
No, I love everything you just said, and thank you everyone for coming here. These are just so special, these once a month lunch and learns, to be able to come together in community virtually from around the world and just be able to hear Dr. Holmes' voice and hear his words. And to me, it is a quickening. You know, there's a quickening that can take place by really deeply opening ourselves to that wisdom. And it really is thanks to everyone's support of the Science Mind Archives that we are able to do this. Become a friend of the archives. It's really cool. If it's only $16 a month or more, or $189 a year, and it includes a website subscription. So you can get up to 20 downloads, and you can, again, it's really available. The audio downloads are available to friends of the archives. And just, again, we're so excited to be here at our new location. We have so much more. We have great visions for our future. And you are part of it. You are part of it. And we're grateful for each one of you. Again, everything that Reverend Dr. Mark said, you know, the website, the YouTube channel, but gosh, that website is spectacular. I just encourage you to check it out. Thank you.
Any prayer?
Oh, you want me to pray? I can pray. I'm good at, I've done that once or twice. So let's just tune in. Let's go within to that place of gratitude. Just feeling that deep, deep wells of gratitude that just bubble up within us. That Grateful for this teaching of science of mind. Grateful that Dr. Ernest Holmes said yes all along the way of his journey. Grateful for each beautiful soul here and each person's yes, to continue to grow, to continue to learn, to continue to deepen, and to truly get to that place of divine alignment where even more and more miracles and beauty and light and love just unfold in each person's lives. Because as each one of us says yes, then the whole world feels that yes. In the oneness, each one of us, we are up-leveling and uplifting the world as a whole and revealing that truth with a capital T of love and peace on earth and joy for us all. So I just say thank you to Reverend Mark, thank you to everyone who came here this day. Grateful for the Science of Mind archives, and just knowing as we move forward with a deeper wisdom, a deeper understanding that just continues to unfold our lives in greater and more beautiful ways. And so it is.
So it is.
So it is. Thank you, everybody, for being here.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.